What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Business Buzz, where we focus on business, entrepreneurship, and today, investing. A few days ago, we made a video on the best mutual funds to invest in. Today, we're going to be doing the same video, but for ETFs. An ETF is very similar to a mutual fund, but usually it's a bit more risky. It's an exchange-traded fund. It always tracks an index, right? And an index is basically just tracking part of the stock market or the stock market as a whole. A lot of ETFs are also industry specific, known as sector ETFs. But as for today, I'm going to be taking you guys through the 5 best ETFs for you to be invested in 2020 for the long term. Guys, please subscribe to our channel, and also shout out to Timon Perrin for being our 600th subscriber. By the way, stay tuned for number 4 because it's personally my favorite ETF ever. I would hold it until the day I die. Number 1. First Trust NASDAQ Cybersecurity ETF. This tracks the NASDAQ Cybersecurity Index. Its ticker symbol is CIBR, better known as Cyber, and it of course focuses around the cybersecurity industry. Cybersecurity, in layman's terms, if you're unsure, is basically the industry that protects you from your data on computers from being stolen, damaged, or changed. They are basically the defense against hackers, all right? And the industry is already big. It's standing at around $120 billion. And by the year 2024, they're expected to hit $300 billion globally as an industry. Cybercrime is also expected to cost the US over $6 trillion just in the year 2021, up from $3 trillion in the year 2015. The same source also predicts over 3.5 million unfilled jobs in cybersecurity next year. So in my opinion, this is the perfect industry to invest in. Cybersecurity is already a big industry, and it's only going to grow from here. It's like a train that just cannot be stopped. Since I believe so strongly that the industry is going to do well, I would recommend not putting all your money into one cybersecurity stock that might be a rotten egg and not do well. Diversify a little so you're going to, actually get the growth from this industry in an ETF. This ETF currently has over 42 holdings, excluding cash, and their biggest holding is Okta Inc. with over 6%. Now, cybersecurity software companies do make up the majority of their holdings. And this is actually a relatively new ETF. It was incepted back in 2015. And since its inception, it's only up 5%. But that just tells me that it's undervalued. Its expense ratio is around 0.6%. And there's also another cybersecurity ETF known as Hack. However, I would recommend Cyber just because Hack is a little more risky. It accepts companies with market caps around $100 million, or Cyber's minimum is $250 million. It also generally goes for more riskier, faster growing cybersecurity companies. And personally, I would recommend just being safer with Cyber because, we're going into kind of a unfamiliar, scary economy right now. So maybe just go into the safer Cyber ETF. Number 2, Vanguard S&P 500. Ticker symbol VOO. It tracks the S&P 500 index, which who hasn't heard of it? Even if you're not invested in the stock market, you've probably heard of the S&P 500. This is basically 500 of the largest cap stocks in the US. And of course, because there's so many large cap stocks, it basically shows how the stock market is doing, in the US as a whole. It makes stock market investing basically as safe as it can be, as it's extremely diversified. Historically speaking, the average return for the S&P 500 is around 10%, which is great for those of you who don't want to do all the work and all the knowledge that comes into stock picking. And you can just kind of be, again, nothing in the stock market is completely safe, but this is about as safe as you can get. Vanguard is also a very large, reliable company whose expense ratio on this ETF is only 0.03%, so you're really not spending much. Also, a little fun fact about the S&P 500 and just how secure it is over long stretches of time. If you would have invested money into the S&P 500 at its peak before the 2008 recession, the huge 2008 recession, if you would have held now in 2020, you would still have nearly doubled your money. Now, of course, the market has performed extraordinarily well since the 2008 recession, besides this setback in the past few months. However, it's also important to keep in mind that really any ETF that tracks the S&P 500 will do basically the same. So you don't have to go with Vanguard. I just personally would because, Warren Buffett himself has recommended it. And Vanguard's just such a strong company. Number 3, Invesco Zacks Multi-Asset Income. Ticker symbol CVY, it tracks Zacks Multi-Asset Income Index. This is a high-paying dividend-focused ETF. It just picks companies with very high dividend payouts. And its average dividend payout, what you'll actually be getting annually from this ETF right now, is 5.8%, which is extremely high. And because it's so diversified, you don't have to worry as much about cutting dividends, because if one company cuts their dividends, you still got all these other stocks to offset it. The expense ratio, however, is very high at 0.97%, but that is because it is actively managed, and 88% of their holdings are in common stock. The other 12% is not. It's, sort of bonds or just high-paying assets. Dividend payouts work just as they do with a regular single stock. However, what ETFs do, which is pretty interesting, is that, all companies, their dividends pay out at different times. So what ETFs do is they hold dividend payouts from all these companies and they usually give it to you quarterly. So you'll be getting your normal quarterly dividend payout from all the companies that paid previously. It's kind of interesting. They have around 150 stocks. So again, they're very diversified. So you can pretty much count on getting near that 6% annual dividend. That might change, up or down, but you can be pretty confident getting around that because they have so many holdings. They're a pretty stable stock actually normally, but since COVID-19, their price has halved. That's right. They are at $13 a share right now, which is way less than they're usually at. So might be a good value right now for you guys. Number 4, Vanguard Value ETF. Ticker symbol VTV, it tracks the CRSP US Large Cap Index. This whole ETF is based around the investment strategy of finding large, strong companies that are undervalued. You might be familiar with this strategy if you study Warren Buffett, because this is his investment strategy and has been his whole investing career. Benjamin Graham also preaches this strategy in his book, The Intelligent Investor. So I just love this ETF. Its expense ratio is just 0.04%, and its annual dividend payout averages almost 4%, which is really good for a non-dividend focused ETF. They have over 327 holdings, which is a bit too much for my taste. However, it means an even safer return. This is the ETF that I would be most happy keeping until I die, that I was talking about at the beginning. Of course, the S&P 500 would be most people's, but this is mine just because it's basically like the S&P 500 if it were upgraded. Their biggest holding is Johnson & Johnson, which just accounts for over 3.5% of its holdings. And next is actually Berkshire Hathaway, which is funny considering I was just talking about Warren Buffett. It's currently selling for around $86 a share, which is about where it was selling 5 years ago. But before the COVID-19 dip, it was actually up around 70% in the last 5 years. So again, every stock basically is at a great value right now. A lot of stocks are anyway, and this is no exception. This is a great value right now. Number 5, Cambria Cannabis. Ticker symbol TOKE. This is a very, very new ETF within the last month that involves heavily in cannabis and hemp stocks. They don't specifically focus on recreational or medical or anything like that. They invest in all sorts of cannabis stocks, nothing really, specific. And actually there's a lot of cannabis ETFs that you can invest in, but this was the one I found with the lowest expense ratio. 0.42% is that expense ratio, and they have around 42 holdings right now, with GW Pharmaceuticals around 9% being their largest holding, and they also have over 5% in cash. So they're ready to buy some more companies, not buy some more companies, but add some more companies to this ETF. Of course, cannabis stocks are very risky, so a cannabis ETF won't be much different, but at least it's diversified, so it's not quite as risky, and there's quite a lot of potential in the cannabis realm. Years down the road, if the whole US has legalized, recreational marijuana use, this could be huge. All in all, you shouldn't put too much of your portfolio into this stock, but if you have some extra cash and if you have a hunch, maybe put some money into this. Guys, that wraps up this video of the 5 best ETFs to invest in as of 2020. I really feel confident in these picks. The last one is a little risky, but the first 4 I mentioned, check their prices in 10 years, and I think they will be doing really well. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe, give us some video ideas, and I'll see you next time.